Reba, and I am one of the producers and the story coach for the Mystery Box Show.
And I'm Eric. I'm the other producer and other story coach for the Mystery Box Show.
May I?
Sure.
And you're going to interject. So
I'll jump in.
Eric started the show because he attended storytelling shows all over town on different topics. And sometimes there would be some stories that were involving sex, and those were always his favorite ones. So he was like, "Cool."
I think they were a lot of the audience's favorite ones too. You could feel the energy of everybody be like, "Oh, this is interesting."
Oh, you never told me that before. That's fascinating because then you know that would be a good show. So anyway, then like searching for the show that surely already existed about sex, like entirely the storytelling show, there wasn't one. Right.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised by that because this is Portland. I mean, and Portland is a pretty sex positive and progressive town, and I figured that if anywhere would have a sex positive storytelling show, it would be Portland or San Francisco, which it turned out had one. So I got in touch with the people in San Francisco and said, "Hey, how do you do what you do?" And they said,
"And weren't you like, can it was body storytelling?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
And weren't you like, "Hey, can I start a body here in Portland?"
Yeah, I was like, what you do is so cool. Like maybe I could head up the Portland chapter of body storytelling. And the body folks said, well, why don't you just do your own show? And I thought, I could do that. I had no idea how that works because I've never put on a show before. I figured that you had to have some sort of degree in theater and engineering and know all kinds of contract law. But it turns out that
that I know all that stuff, so it's fine.
It turned out that all you have to do is hand over $175 to a person with a theater, and they said, use it for the night. So we did. We found 5 storytellers and put together a show, and people showed up.
Which were basically like friends,
yeah.
Actually. It was like scrounging. Because what we've learned, so I wasn't there for the first show, but I think what we've learned since then in the last like 3 years, well, I've been with the show for 2 years, is that people want to come hear stories about sex like that, no problem. But telling stories about sex is a whole other situation.
Yeah, it's a personal thing. It's vulnerable, and so yeah, it's never a surprise. It's frankly, it's a little. It can be frustrating for us when we're like just trying to find storytellers to come tell your story, and we're like, come on, we'll help you out and we'll make it comfortable. But it's also totally understandable that people are like, I don't want to talk about that on stage.
Yeah. So what did you have? You had like, and when the show first started, it's called the Mystery Box Show because there was an actual literal mystery box.
At the first one, there were 2 literal mystery boxes.
And the idea was that you were to tell a story that had a prop associated with it. So if I was going to tell a story about...
I like that you call it a prop because you're a theater person.
It is a prop.
I know, but like I think I called it an object because I'm not a theater person.
No, it's a prop. So if I was going to tell a story about like that one time I had sex in a graveyard, maybe I would have brought
body.
or like an etching of the right?
Yeah.
Like or the
idea was to bring something that has emotional value to you and is tied to some story about sex.
But
that was misguided because it turns out that most people don't have something like that.
Right. So that only lasted for like 2 shows, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought we were going to have like 5 storytellers at every show with objects just, coming out of mystery boxes and saying, here's what this thing's about. And at the first show, there were only 2 people, and I was one of them that had an object. And the second show, there was 1 person, and since then, all the boxes and props have been dropped from the show, but the name remains.
Yeah. And Eric was only a storyteller the first time because somebody else dropped out, right?
Yeah.
But that's because like it was so hard to get people to tell stories at all. So it was like begging people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not like that. Now we have pitches coming out of our faces. Pitches coming out of our faces.
Out of the face.
Yeah. So people even ask us like, what is the show? And what is the show?
We like to say it's a storytelling show where people get on stage and tell true stories from their lives. all on the subjects of sex and sexuality.
And they're unmemorized,
Unscripted.
unscripted. They are coached, like we talked about before. So it's not just them getting up there doing an open mic type situation.
A lot of people these days have a touchstone of shows like The Moth. It's interesting. I've even spoken to people who I've said we do a storytelling show, and they'll say like, "What is that? What does that mean?" And I'll say, "Are you familiar with The Moth?" And they'll say, "I love The Moth," and that's exactly what it is. I think maybe people don't process that as storytelling.
Yeah, and I think also the types of stories that we have. Sometimes when we'll invite somebody, that we're scouting and say, "Hey, we'd love for you to pitch a story to us," they'll say, I don't have any sex stories." But actually, like, everybody has a sex story, even if you've never had sex. I feel like it's sex and sexuality, and we like to do the whole spectrum. So we've even had asexual people on the stage before telling their stories. We've had stories about. Well, I told a story about breastfeeding and sexuality.
Yeah.
There's been threesome stories
And it's interesting. Like Reba said, most people when we approach them, they'll say, your show sounds great, but I don't really have any sex stories, and it's all a matter of what feels normal to you. I think most people assume that we're looking for the craziest kind of anything, and if something feels normal to you, it won't feel like it's exotic enough. And my favorite example of that is we approached one gentleman one time who's a pretty well-known storyteller in the area, and we said, "You're terrific. We'd love you to do our show." He said, "Your show sounds great. I just don't have any sex stories. I'm sorry, I live a pretty dull life sexually. That's just how it is. My wife and I just started dating a woman, but other than that," and we're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 what?" And it's if it's normal for you, you forget that it might be interesting and unusual to other people.
Yeah.
Not unusual in a bad way, just the other people might be interested in hearing about it. I am.
Yeah. So anyway, lots of different stories. Sex by yourself stories, sex with other people's stories.
Sex with many other people's stories.
Sex is in I'm trying to think of any stories at all now. Yeah, polyamory stories, monogamy stories.
We've had stories where people talk about a time that they went to some kind of orgy and had extreme sex acts. We've had storytellers tell about times that don't even involve them having sex. During our last show, we had a fantastic story of a father who had to give the sex talk to his 5-year-old boy. Through his own misguided parenting, he realized as it was happening. Yeah, all kinds of stories that have to do with sex. This is so weird that I'm even so uncomfortable saying the word sex. You would think that in a show that I help to run that's all about sex, I would be all about saying the word as much as possible with as much confidence as possible, but I am not.
I am.
She is. I guess that's why I like to say that's why I'm the host of the show, and other people tell stories.
You tell stories.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask us what the process is for, like, if I do know that I want to tell a story about my sex life, how does that work? How do I get onto your stage? So we have a pretty simple process for doing that, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have we ask people to email us their pitch, which is just a couple sentences. We don't want the whole story at all because we want to save that for the in-person experience when we're hearing the whole story for the first time. People email us just a couple sentences, and we have an eye.
An instinct.
We have an instinct.
We developed an instinct.
To be able to kind of tell if the pitch is going to go anywhere. A good story for us, for our stage, is going to have high stakes, either emotional stakes or physical stakes, or something that's going to keep the audience caring.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, like, we found that there are people who will pitch stories that are about, maybe a fascinating sexual experience they had, but if there's nothing that's really tied to that emotionally. Like if there's nothing that they gained or found a new perspective on themselves from, then it can turn into just a story of them bragging about this time I had crazy sex, which is interesting for them. But if you're on a stage, the audience can quickly lose interest and go like, "Well, good for you, dude," but you know,
Yeah.
why should I care?
Yeah, I think we get people through the pitch process. We also kind of filter out. Often people will pitch us stories that they think is about sex, but really is about their long and complicated relationship. Lots of relationship stories, which are definitely tied into sex, but
Yeah.
often that's not the focus of it.
We like our stories to be like specifically focused on the sex, which isn't to say that your story might not be terrific, but for our specific show, it needs to have that core.
Yeah. So once the pitch sounds good, then we meet with them in person, either one of us or both of us, and we hear the whole story. We shoot for a finished product story of like 10 to 12 minutes. But during that first storytelling coaching session, it can be however long it takes for them to just get the whole story out. It can be very raw. And then we take notes and sort of pare it down and help make the story linear. Because they're usually not.
It's hard. I think no matter who you are, no matter how practiced a storyteller you are, no matter how professional or how amateur, you it's hard to know what your story is because we don't live our lives in story form. Like we don't live our lives where this happens, then this happens, and this happens, and it's all very linear and constructed. Our lives are complicated because we do this thing and it's connected to that thing I thought I saw yesterday on TV, but it was really this, and I was thinking about my dad when that happened, and that reminds me of this and that. And that's how the brain works because it's all interconnected. But when you're telling a story, it needs to be succinct and to the point, and that's really what we help bring out of the story, is to find the story the person wants to tell and make it listenable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we meet with them. Depending on how much coaching a person needs, we'll meet with them 1 to 2 more times after that. And they can tell us the story again with our notes incorporated into it. And we don't just say like, do it this way. It's an interview process. A lot of people have told us that it's been therapeutic for them because of the questions that we ask. So we do get feedback from them and try to make it a collaborative effort.
One of my favorite things that's ever happened, this is like to the point of it being like therapy, is we were working with a storyteller. No names. But at one point we were trying to find the focus of the story, and Reba asked this storyteller a question that was getting to the heart of the emotions that they were talking about, and the storyteller like stopped and seemed to consider their entire life based on that one question. They looked at us and said, I don't think I can tell this story right now. Oh man. Wow. And I love that happened. I always hope that we're not doing any kind of damage to anybody who comes to talk to us, but it really can be.
He came to us.
Yeah.
He came to us.
It can be an emotional process, but we try to make that comfortable and put people at ease.
Yeah. And that is kind of my thing. I'm more of we both could do a coaching session on our own, but we work really well together, and that Eric is very good with the structure of a story, and I'm very good with the emotions and asking the right questions and getting to what it is you're actually trying to say.
Heartless, heartful.
I'm heartful. Anyway, and then we might see them one more time depending, and then we have a final rehearsal. I call it a rehearsal. You do not.
Theater person.
With all 5 storytellers together so they can all hear each other's stories. And then we do final, polishing notes, and that's when we work on their stage performance, because a lot of the people we work with have never been on stage before. They've never held a microphone before. They're freaked out, and some people are totally natural. And do it all the time. So it's pretty cool to have all of that in the same room together, observing each other and helping each other.
The more I think about it, like I've thought about this recently, that the meeting, pardon me, the meeting that Reba's talking about, where we get everybody together, It's so much fun and just casual to see everybody meet each other and have the show just coalesce and have everybody just, I don't know, sort of magnetize and feel like this is the show. What I've been thinking about recently is like the show is so much more than the 2 hours that we and the storytellers are on stage. It's everything leading up to that, and I don't know if there's a way to. There's not a way to get everybody in the audience to experience that, but they experience the culmination of it. I think it's really cool, and I don't know. I feel privileged to experience the whole thing. That's cheesy, but it's true. I'm sentimental.
Heartless. So we have a couple of rules that we ask our storytellers to oblige by. And we've had to create these rules because of incidences that have happened.
When you see like a hairdryer that says do not use in the shower and you think, why would that label be there? And you think the only reason they would put that label there is because somebody probably tried to use it in the shower.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had to create rules based on those rules being violated before they existed.
Rule number 1, please dress nicely, whatever nice means to you, and please don't wear any costumes or costume accessories. Please keep your shoes on at all times, especially when you walk on stage. Please don't throw things at the audience.
Yes.
Please keep your clothing on
throughout the story.
No drinking on stage. What else is there?
My personal favorite one, please don't get too high before telling your story.
Yeah.
I feel bad if any of our storytellers watch this.
We're not saying any names or
they know who they are.
We're not even telling them story what happened. Yeah, we have those. So, rules kind of help us keep things together because Eric and I produce the show entirely on our own. We coach all of the stories by ourselves. We do all the business end of it. We have many awesome sponsors. We do all of the sponsorship dealings with business end of it on our own. All of the details of everything, and then we have volunteers that help us out day of, and sometimes they're the same ones we've had before, sometimes they're brand new. We had a production assistant for a while who was pretty helpful, but the hardcore meat of the show is still Eric and myself, probably because it's our baby, and so it's hard to let go of control.
And because we've been doing it for so long, it's hard to know how anybody else could do it. There's a lot of legacy knowledge and legacy experience.
Yeah, and we also live together, so we're like working. We like wake up at 3 a.m. and we're like, "Hey, that one story, blah blah blah," or "Did you call the sponsor about the whatever?" So we, we're working 24/7, and yeah. What were you gonna say about that one time?
Well, so the thing is, like, there's always a lot of scrambling that comes up to the day of show, and it's fascinating to me that so much goes into it. We've had people say like, your show has such great production values, which is so strange to me because the show is nothing more than a person and a microphone stand on stage. But that's deceptive. There is a lot that goes into it and making it run smoothly. And so a lot of times there's preparations that have to happen, and we don't get to the finishing touches until hours before the show.
Yeah. So usually, like, I'm fully dressed when we arrive at the venue, and I always wear something super fancy. But my hair and makeup's probably not done yet, and Eric doesn't even wear. You don't even wear your show outfit. You just like show up in pajamas.
Outfit.
And use show costume. And so so when we were back at the at Mississippi Studios, right, I would have a gal come and she would do most of my makeup, but then I would do my own mascara, because if you've ever done mascara, you know that it's really personal and you have to get like way up in your eye and it's whatever. And so all of our volunteers were there, people were piling in, the doors were already open, and it was a sold out house, and the storytellers are all nervous, and we're trying to get everybody like calm or whatever. And I have like my face up to a mirror and I'm putting on mascara like this.
Meanwhile, I'm preparing myself for the show because I have a certain shirt that I wear for the show. It's just a nice black pinstripe shirt that I always iron, and then usually right before the show is when I shave, so I have a nice nice smooth head because I like that. And so I was in the bathroom at Mississippi Studios shaving with my brand new razor from Harry's. Go there right now, get a cool discount. I don't know what I'm doing. And there was. Here's the thing: if you're a head shaver, or if you're not, then you probably don't know this. That shaving a head is different than shaving a face. Because it's bone and skull back there. This is a lot more fleshy, so you have to be a lot more careful with the razor. I am unfortunately familiar with the feeling of a multi-bladed razor not shaving hair but tearing into skin, and I felt that at this point about an hour before the show started, as I ripped the razor. I'm sorry for anybody who's grossed out by this. Trigger warning. I basically ripped the back of my head. And so I tried to calmly walk out to the hallway where Reba was applying her mascara.
I wonder if there's still a scar. I was just trying to find it. I don't know. I don't remember where it is.
So Reba's applying her mascara, and I walk up to her, and I try very calmly to say, "Hello, dear. Nothing to be worried about." Because I thought it was obvious that she would see that there was a trickle of blood now running over my ear.
Yeah, except my face was this close to a mirror, and I was like, not now. Mascara is happening.
She could not see me at all.
Yeah.
I thought it would be super obvious.
And I was pretty annoyed because I was like, I got mascara going on. What? Why
are you bothering me? And I try to hint more. Rather than being outright and direct, I try to subtly say, "Oh, hey, I see that you're busy, but I just wanted to let you know about a little thing that's going on." And I think that's the point where she turned to me. What was your reaction?
Okay, you were still wearing, it was a white, like an undershirt or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned to him, and he looked like somebody straight out of a horror film. There was blood covering like all the front of his shirt, like pouring down his face and neck. Like, I thought you had been decapitated. There was so much blood, and I was like, what are you doing? What is happening?
So I pulled her into the bathroom with me. She unbuttoned my shirt just because everything was getting to be pretty messy, and I didn't even know that the blood had like just started pooling on my chest all over the place.
Yeah, we're like half an hour till showtime at this point.
we get me cleaned up, and
blood all over his hair, all over his chest, hair, everything.
Yeah. Oh, I think somehow I had acquired, or somebody, maybe, I think one of the storytellers, I think it was Henry. Henry went in search of like a large bandage, so that I could hand it to Reba in the bathroom and say, because I need you.
Go to the convenience store?
Yeah, somewhere in the middle of there, I found the time and the presence of mind to get some paper towels over the back of my head, walk through many friends and fans in the audience. That I said, I don't have time to talk right now. I'll be right back, trying to hide the fact that I was
gushing blood.
Yeah.
And you couldn't find me because I had been taken backstage when Brianna was doing my makeup, because that's the only place that had enough light. Mm-hmm. So you were looking for me but couldn't find me.
So I walked to the convenience store. I wait behind a man who is buying jelly beans, and and I say to the clerk, "Do you have any large bandages?" And the clerk said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Oh, I'm fine. I just need to hold this paper towel over the back of my head, or else, my brains will fall out." And I make my way back upstairs. I get Reba and I say, "Please come into the bathroom. I have this bandage that I can't apply myself. Can you help me out?" And it took a while to get the blood to a place where there was enough dry skin to attach a bandage. Here's the thing. It's good to be resourceful. We have one of our sponsors. We have amazing sponsors. I just got to say. And one of our amazing sponsors is Gurin Brothers. They make hats. They make these beautiful hats. And throughout the show, there are times when Reba and I will wear hats. We don't wear them the entire time, but we'll wear Gurin hats now and then to showcase the hats that are,
But
that just came in season or whatever. At this point, with my head gushing blood and not sure if this bandage would stay on because my skin was not going to be dry for very long, we decided it's going to have to be a full hat show. Like 100% hats on all the time, because that's the only thing that's going to keep this bandage in place.
yeah, but also the bandage was so big, you could definitely see it from stage. Like you could definitely be like, why does Eric have a giant like flap door that opens into the back of his head?
Also, when I'm on stage, when I'm hosting the show, I tend to be pretty how would you say, bouncy, animated. It was the first time I had to be mindful of just keeping my face forward, so I didn't turn my head for anybody to see the bandage, or potentially rip something open and have more blood coming shooting down like a Monty Python film. Yeah, so I'm fascinated when I hear about theater or movie performances with a disaster anecdote, and that's one of ours. We got through the show. I seriously think it took like 3 or 4 days to stop bleeding. It obviously it wasn't as full flow as the night that it happened, but yeah, it took a couple days for everything to coagulate the word? That's not the thing. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
No, something.
Congeal.
For for the blood to stop blooding.
The feminist in me wants to say, so what? Like, women bleed for 4 to 7 days every month. There's not really been any other disasters except that one time the gal said, "Oh, remember that story you guys coached me on? I'm going to not tell that on stage. I'm going to tell a different one." Okay, bye. I'm on stage now.
Yeah, there was somebody who switched their story just before walking to stage, which we do not encourage.
We did not coach. We do not approve. And it was a bad story.
I don't think we actively have discouraged that though. So maybe we should make that a policy also. We should actively discourage people changing
be part
their story.
of our rules. Yeah. Keep your clothes on and keep
we
your story.
We just assumed it was a given because we coach you on a story. Please tell that story.
So I think it's really interesting that people do see us as a sex positive event happening. And we honestly never really set out for that to be the intention. Eric and I have kind of differing opinions about this, but what was your intention? I want to hear.
Well, I mean, to do the show, I obviously, honestly, my intention was just to put on the show that I wanted to go see. I didn't have any agenda of being sex positive or trying to put forth a message. Yeah.
But I will say this, I'm going to interject because that's not entirely true. Your objective and agenda was...
I'm not a liar.
No, but you're forgetting this part. Because Eric didn't say this earlier, but you are uncomfortable in sexually charged environments. So like burlesque shows or other sex positive shows that are like throwing condoms at you or, hitting people over the heads with dildos.
Which a lot of people seem to enjoy. I mean, the shows, but also getting hit over the head with dildos. I mean, if that's your thing, and that's cool. But I've been in those spaces, and I've been in those spaces up to that point, and I've always felt... pardon me. I'd always felt... I'd felt like I wasn't good enough. Like I'd felt like I wasn't kinky enough to be in those spaces. I'd felt like I wasn't open-minded enough to be, let's say, bisexual, which was a thing growing up. That's an issue of mine. I don't know. I shouldn't even have said that. But so before the show started, I'd been looking for sexual experiences or just trying to put myself in spaces where I could learn about things that were going on, which is always something like that. That's always what I enjoyed, is learning stuff that other people do, whether or not I was interested in doing it. Most of the time I wasn't interested in doing it, but I love that other people are. But most of the places I would go, whether they were shows or parties or gatherings, I would just feel uncomfortable. I would feel unworthy. I would feel judged and like I wasn't kinky enough or open-minded enough, which I was probably putting a lot of that on myself. It wasn't like people were shaming me outright, but I felt shame for whatever reason.
No, but there's a certain energy if you go to a sex party, if you go to a dungeon, if you whatever, there's a certain energy, and you can either feel very welcome or sometimes you can not feel welcome based on like the language or the body language or the things people are saying.
Yeah, it can feel like it can feel a little bit exclusive, and if you're not familiar with the situation, it can feel unwelcoming.
Right. So, and I think I think you started it, and I think we both do a really good job at making our show feel inclusive. And so, so to answer the bit about,
I want to take a pause just for a second, because we have a lot of friends in the kink and sex positive community these days, and I should say that that we do know that many spaces these days make it a point to make people feel comfortable and welcome when they come into those spaces. That's not at all a portrait of all spaces, and certainly not these days.
yeah, I agree with that. But I also think people, every time we have a show, every single time, people come out of it saying, well, that's not what I expected it to be, in a good way. I thought it was going to be like, or some people.
What do you think people expect the show to be when they come to it?
I think people expect it to be like erotic fan fiction and like, erotic. I think people expect it to be titillating, and that's uncomfortable in a public environment for a lot of people. That's why like some of the people we know didn't come to the show for a really long time, because they had an idea of what they thought it was, even though they were friends with us, even though we would try to explain it, but we create an environment, and then they finally come and they're like, oh, cool, I'm coming again, and I'm bringing my mom. Like, it's that comfortable.
Reba's mom has been to the show. My mom has not. My mom is not invited.
She wants to come though.
But yeah, that's the goal, is to have it be a comfortable space. But as far as being sex positive, my intention was never to have anything with an agenda to say to an audience like, hey, here's how you should feel about sex or sex positivity, or about storytelling, really. But like Reba said, I think we have different perspectives on this. So what do you feel?
Well, I never try to tell people either, because I really think that people, what am I trying to say? I know that people don't learn, and not that I'm trying to teach, but people don't learn by lecture. People learn by example, or appreciate by example, I guess. And so I think the example we set is, here is our aesthetic, here it is, and here is the style of story that we've created, and the way that it's constructed to make it that person's story, and never lecturing, and never put onto the audience. And I think that the audience feels that. I don't know if they can point it out and say, oh, that's what's happening. But I definitely think that they walk away feeling safe.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Reba brings up, pardon me. It's interesting that Reba brings up that whole point about being a lecture. Just the distinction between that, we talk about storytellers who might get on stage and say, I went through this experience and found that when I was open-minded, it was so much better. So everybody, be open-minded. And we find that, like, if somebody gets on stage and does that, the audience's knee-jerk reaction is to go like, don't tell me how to be. But if that same storyteller were to say, hey, I had this experience, and when I was open-minded about it, it felt so much better to me. And that's really what I took away from it, is that when I was open-minded, it was better. Then we find that the audience feels welcome into that, and invited to connect and say, I wonder if I would also feel like that if I were in that situation, rather than resisting being like Reba said, lectured at.
Yeah. And for me, I think the biggest joy for me, or the biggest mission for me, or whatever, is that connection, people connecting to people. That's the whole point of it for me. And I don't know if these are the same words you would use now, but Eric's always just said, I just wanted to create something entertaining. It's just all about the entertainment. So it's never been like, here's a sex positive thing and it means something. He's like, it doesn't mean anything. It's just entertainment. I don't know if you really still feel that way.
I do.
But,
I do.
And I don't feel that way because I hear the storytellers' experiences, and they tell us like why that was meaningful for them. And I hear the audience telling us, I really appreciated that this was told. I related to this, or I never thought of it that way. I'm glad that that story was told. So I see and I hear that it's meaningful to people. And it's, I think synchronicity is a real thing. So even people telling stories to us, I relate to some of the things that they're saying. And I take value in that.
I want to be clear. I don't think that people don't find meaning in the show. I just for me personally, my goal is never to try to imbue the show with meaning, because I feel, I don't know, I for me that I feel that would not be genuine. I just want to put on a show that people have a good time at. And if you get something else out of it, if you get something moving out of it, if you get something life-changing out of it, awesome. But I'm not trying to change anybody's life. If it happens, it happens. But I don't know. I don't want to lecture anybody. That's how I feel. But I think Reba feels differently, but she also doesn't want to lecture anybody. Is that right?
Well, I don't know. I think, like I said, I like that people can share their stories because it helps them connect and it helps the audience feel connected. That's it. That's my agenda.
Cool.
Yeah. Some people we have to scout to tell stories with us, and we have to, encourage them a lot. And a lot of times they're bigger names, people who are well known in either the sex community or the community at large, authors, musicians.
It's our goal to have people tell stories from all over the sexual spectrum. And a lot of people who are storytellers of ours have never been on stage before, but we also seek out people who have been on stage because they have a certain presence, and people are fascinated to see them. People who are a little bit more famous. We've had people like people who are famous in the sex positive community, like Lee Harrington and Princess Callie. Sierra Lynch has done our show. We've had Hutch Harris from the Thermals, Christine Levine, who's an incredible Portland comedian. She's been on Portlandia. And here's the thing: these people are famous and well known, and I personally get very intimidated talking to people who are famous, and I am fascinated that Reba does not.
Because I don't believe in fame. I don't think famous is I don't think that's real.
Say more.
Well, I mean, people are people, dude. Like you've heard this your whole life, that they put on their pants the same way that we do, right? And it's true. I think that famous people are people who are really good at their jobs. So musicians who are really good at their jobs. So everyone appreciates that and likes them. But you wouldn't be like, oh my God, this is the world's greatest garbage man. I'm so scared to talk to him. You just wouldn't. Or the world's best accountant or whatever. And I think I don't get it.
Reba's able to talk to famous people like they're regular people, and I am not able to look them in the eye because I think that they know that I am not as good as they are. Reba thinks that everybody is as good as everybody. I should say that although I harbor these feelings, I also know that she is right and I am wrong. I wish I felt differently. I wish I could speak to famous people. I'll say this now. I'll say it into the camera. Hutch, I wish I could talk to you like a normal person, like Reba does.
You're ridiculous.
I apologize for
I
being
see. I
intimidated.
think it's insulting. I think that's super insulting
She's right.
to Hutch or to anybody. My favorite moment was when we were at the Bridgetown Comedy Festival because the show.
She's gonna do a face that I made.
The show was a part of the Mystery Box show was a part of Bridgetown, and we were backstage, and I don't even know the guy's name
Matt Bronger,
because I don't believe in fame. So Matt Bronger apparently is very famous, and did he start Bridgetown?
He's one of the co-founders with along with Andy Wood.
Yeah, so we're in the green room, and there's a bunch of these comedians, and Eric and I are back there, and Matt Bronger walks in, and he starts talking to somebody who we were talking to, and I reached my hand out, and I said, "Hi, I'm Reba," and he goes, "Oh, hi," and I said, "And you are?" And Eric looked, because I wanted to know his fucking name. Like, would you ask people their names? And I knew, like, I'd seen his face. I knew he was somebody, but I don't know. And Eric looked over at me and he goes, like, he couldn't believe I just asked a famous person his name.
How
like,
insulting that you would not know who they are.
He expects you to know who he is. And it was the funniest. I wish I could replicate it, like, exactly, but I don't think I can. But it was pretty awesome. And then later I told him he did that, and he was like, I didn't know that I looked at you that way, but that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know why I get this way. I wish I didn't. Hopefully, if we do the show more and more famous people come to join us, I'll get more practice talking to them. But I secretly think that even if that happens, I will still be intimidated all the way. And Reba will be best friends with anybody she talks to, because that's just naturally what happens. She treats people like people. I treat people like I don't deserve to talk to them.
That's sad.
I know.
Which is weird too, because people like recognize him on the street all the time, and they're like, "You're that guy." Like, he's Portland famous.
I'm not Portland famous.
I'm Portland famous.
She is. We do get recognized from time to time, and I never know how to take it.
It's like other people feel that way about you who's a normal dude. So don't you think that all these other famous people know that they're normal dudes?
No, I know I'm a normal dude, but other people are not. I know that people are mistaken about me if they think that I'm notable. But famous people are famous for a reason. They are our superiors.
You're ridiculous. I'm gonna go burn a bra.
Cutting loose, he's drinking juice.